In case you were wondering, sorry.
And that's about it.
Thanks, Commissioner Nemeth. Next, Commissioner Wall.
Nothing major. I would love to co-sign Commissioner Meadows' effort on traffic calming in Forest Hills, along with the streets you mentioned, Brandywine and Davenport. Both are lots of speeding on those streets with people cutting up from Broad Branch to Connecticut. So we'll be happy to add on a few additional intersections to that effort. That's it for me.
Thanks, Commissioner Wall. Commissioner David.
Hi, same here. So there are a couple of traffic calming efforts. So I've recently submitted a traffic safety assessment questionnaire for 34th Street. So a resident's son was almost hit by a car on the intersection of between 34th Street and Fessenden and Garrison, that block. And then recently we've received information about crossing guards, normally at Fessenden in Connecticut, haven't been seen within the past week. And so we did get a response from DDOT that they'll follow up. I'll reach out to them again tomorrow, but hopefully sooner than later we get a crossing guard on that block as the days are getting shorter. Thank you.
Great, Commissioner David. And I know Commissioner Appa was trying to get on, so she's not on yet.
Yeah, she's texting me right now. She's trying to log in, and so she might log in virtual, but we'll see.
So my update is, and I'll share my screen, is again kind of a shout out to Van Ness Main Street about the RL night. I was not here, but I heard it was a big success. What I want to talk about and mention as a public service announcement is the Van Ness Commercial Quarter Project has begun. And this Saturday, October 23rd from 10 to 1, there's going to be a community meeting at the UDC amphitheater. So hopefully everybody can see that on their screen, and we'll try and get that up on our website. I know it's on the Van Ness Main Street website, it's other websites. So please join us if you can. It's trying to make Connecticut Avenue and Van Ness, the Main Street and the public sidewalk area, a better space to be. So that's all I have for tonight. And I want to welcome everybody to the meeting. I forgot in my nervousness to sort of remind everybody about the Zoom protocol. If you want to talk, raise your hand. You can do it the old-fashioned way, or you can do it the Zoom way, which is the bottom of your screen. And I'll ask my fellow commissioners just to help me watch this. You can also put questions in the chat. That seems like the modern way of doing it. So join the chat crowd. With that, we'll begin the agenda items. The first item we've got is an action item, and it's the Van Ness traffic calming. And I've got to admit some people to the waiting room, and whoops. So the Van Ness traffic calming, it's a resolution that was in draft form last month. It's been with us for about a month now. Essentially, it was a group of neighbors that put together some 311 calls, or 311 requests for service to try and make the traffic calmer on Van Ness Street between Reno and Wisconsin Avenues. Those efforts were unsuccessful, and so they've elevated this effort to try and get more support, and that more support essentially is a resolution that would come from us, ANC3F, that would ask DDOT and MPD, which is the police department, to increase enforcement. So I'm going to put we've got the draft on that, and I'll at least put the punchline up there. And I know there's some neighbors that are here, and I know Robin Maher, who's been kind of leading that effort. If you're here and you want to say something, I'll yield the floor to you. Says, okay, she's unable to join, so I'll try to pull this up. And if there's any questions on my commissioners, this is the time to ask some questions. And while I'm also pull this up. And so as to our resolutions, there's a lots of whereases, which are essentially making the case for what follows. And it talks about why this is important, the speeding, the people almost getting hit, DDOT's declination to do the traffic assessment we've asked for. So therefore, this is why this is important. And this is what we're asking DDOT to do. So you can read this screen. And these are essentially most of what we asked for before. These 7 dots, trying to get the speed limit down to 20, stop signs with flashing lights, stop sign and speed cameras, more prominent some signage, raised crosswalks. And then we're going to ask DDOT and MPD to respond to this, this resolution within 30 days. So that's, we're also asking DDOT and MPD staff to help us with this. And if this is passed, it authorizes myself to speak on behalf of the commission to DDOT, MPD, the mayor's office, and council member Che. So any questions for my fellow commissioners or any questions from the community?
David, if I may, it's always a good idea to have 2 commissioners listed as, so if you're not available, that there's a backup who can also speak to the resolution.
So Commissioner Nemeth, is that a volunteering to be on the resolution?
Sure, you can put me down if you like.
Perfect. When you forget something, there's always a volunteer opportunity with this commission. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that. Anything else? Any other questions or concerns about this? I think I hear crickets outside. All right, hearing none. Can I get a motion from somebody? A commissioner, I mean, not anybody. Sorry.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second the motion.
In from Commissioner Mehta. So we have a motion from Commissioner Wall, a second from Commissioner Mehta. We have a volunteer to be a co-person in Commissioner Nemeth. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And I think any abstentions? I think Commissioner App is not here, so the resolution passes 6-0. Oh, she's waiting. If you don't mind, I don't know if this is from a process perspective, Commissioner Appa's just getting on. Commissioner App, are you there?
Hi, David. Hi, Commissioner Steele. This is Commissioner Appa. I'm on the call now.
All right. So this is a little bit. This is probably a little bit unorthodox, but we just, I don't know. Who's the
We
parliament?
took the vote. We did take the vote, David.
Oh, I see. So we can't go backwards.
I would say it would be
All right.
appropriate. I mean, it did pass unanimously, so.
All right. So
Is this for
welcome.
the traffic calming measure action item?
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe for the record, even though I did not get to vote, I am in support.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm.
All right. Thanks to the neighbors of Van Ness at 3738, Robin Maher and neighbors. Thanks for bringing this up to us. We've got some work to do after this meeting, so but I think I appreciate all your hard work on this. Thanks. So the next item is the application for construction permit. It's a curb cut, 3007 Albemarle Street. And this is something that's been on our agenda for a while and it's come off the agenda for a while. So it's back with us tonight. And I think I've seen the email traffic. And so I want to introduce that and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Mehta. But first, I want to thank Commissioner Mehta for work on this, including forwarding email messages from nearby residents, myself and fellow commissioners. I think you've done a wonderful job at facilitating input to address the applicant's request for the curb cut. As we've seen, your facilitation between the applicants and neighbors has generated questions that the applicant in turn has attempted to address. and we'll discuss this evening. It appears that some of the questions have been addressed, maybe all of them have been addressed, especially considering that the request before us tonight is really on the curb cut. It's not the variance or any other action that may follow based on the anticipated lot subdivision. So we expect a respectful and concise discussion of this matter. As this is an action item, ANC3F will, after considering the discussion, vote on whether or not to support the applicant's request for the curb cut. So with that, Commissioner Mehta, this matters with you. If you want to make an opening remark.
Thank you, Commissioner Castillo, and thank you for all the all the residents and concerned and interested and engaged citizens around this property and on nearby properties that have shown up tonight to share their views, or at least listen in, if not share views. Applicants Paul and Nez Harrison live at 3007 Albemarle Street. They contacted me back in May of this year to discuss their application to DDOT for a curb cut to install a driveway next to their house and to request an appearance at the June ANC meeting to seek approval for their public space permit. The request to appear at that meeting was obviously delayed. It was again delayed in July. There was no August meeting, and it was again delayed in September, so it will be considered tonight. The reason for those delays is to give neighbors and to give my fellow commissioners an opportunity to examine the issues that have been raised with respect to the curb cut application over the course of the past few months. It's hard to summarize all of the various concerns, but at a high level, in looking back at my correspondence and emails and the conversations and notes from a walkthrough that I had, I think I can generally say that those concerns fall into three particular categories. One is environmental, related specifically to tree removal. The second is stormwater management, related specifically to the impact of water runoff currently from that property and potentially in the future as a result of the curb cut. And third is traffic safety concerns stemming from the installation of a driveway next to their home, which would be on Appleton, not on Albemarle, which is the current address of the home. With respect to the environmental concerns around the trees, I'd like to address that first, since it's frankly pretty easy to pull off the table. The ANC does not weigh in on tree permits or tree removal issues. We have no authority and no purview in that regard. That is an entirely separate process that is conducted by urban forestry and the city arborists. So to the extent there are tree removal questions or concerns, those can be raised with urban forestry, but this is not the appropriate forum for discussion around whether a permit to remove a tree was appropriate or not. With respect to stormwater management, that has been discussed extensively and will be discussed tonight. The applicants have fielded questions so far, and I assume plan to field questions tonight because I see that they have brought an expert to present information on stormwater management going forward. And third, with respect to traffic safety concerns, I note that traffic safety concerns were raised specifically by two residents, both of whom I believe have driveways already around in that area where the applicants are proposing to put driveways. The applicants are prepared, I assume, to respond to traffic safety concerns that are raised tonight. And finally, I note that, and frankly, most importantly, I note that I received, and it has been on the ANC's website for several months now, a well-drafted and well-thought-out letter raising concerns most significantly around stormwater management issues. That letter is dated July 11th. It's been on our website for several weeks and months after that time period. And I would like to take a moment to thank the folks who drafted that letter, and in particular, some of the folks who subsequently shared photographs and evidence around stormwater management concerns. Ms. Hernandez in particular has been extremely constructive and thoughtful in sharing her input around stormwater management concerns, and I thank you for that, Ms. Hernandez. I also would like to note that that letter was signed by residence owners of 4 properties, of those 4 property, the letter begins with I'm paraphrasing now, but it begins something to the effect of we, the residents undersigned, reside at properties that abut 3007 Albemarle. I note that 3 of the residents' homes whose addresses are on that letter do indeed abut 3007 Albemarle. I will also note that 1 of those residents' families that signed that letter do not abut 3007 Albemarle, and in fact, they're also not within the 200-foot zone of consideration prescribed by the BZA for impacts relating to permits. Finally, I would like to take a quick moment before I turn it over to the applicants to present their permit considerations, to thank the folks who have also contacted me by email over the last 48 hours or so. Please be assured, I did my best to respond to everybody, but the flurry of emails was frankly overwhelming. Please be assured every single email was read, and I appreciate the civility and the tone and the thoughtfulness with which you approached me in the last few days and registered your concerns about not just the curb cut, but about any particular follow-on plans that accompany the curb cut in future months and years to come. With that introduction on background and process, I will turn over the floor to Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, the applicants, to introduce their curb cut permit request.
Thank you, Commissioner Deepa. And we had sent in a PowerPoint to Commissioner Crystal. Do you have that? Or should we put it up?
You know, if you're probably faster than I am for me to get my email and to.
Okay, can I share screen?
Yeah, of course.
Great. You have to give me permission. Sorry.
Oh gosh. So somebody out there remind me how to do it.
At the bottom where it says share screen, there should be a little.
You should have permission already, I think.
Still says host.
No, okay, you got it now.
Great. Can everyone see that?
It's coming up. Okay, we got it.
Okay, so hi everyone. We're here tonight to ask for the ANC's blessing of a curb cut so we can build an environmentally state-of-the-art new home for our multi-generation family. That's my wife Nez, me and my son William. Nez's parents Isla and Isan live with us most of the year, except when they're back in Turkey dealing with some family issues. My mother Janine lives nearby at the Essex at Connecticut and Davenport. She's usually here. We promised her we'll host exchange students through her work at the American Council on International Education as well. We're going to dig into the curb cut here, but we'll have a chance to introduce you to our team and preview a discussion that we hope to have next month before the ANC about the BZA variances. So we're here because we searched for almost 2 years for the ideal Forest Hills site. Remarkably, the enormous 3007 Albemarle came on the market on March 30th, 2020. So after being owned by the same family and never updated in almost a century, just 2 weeks after the WHO declared the COVID pandemic, this came up. And that meant we were only competitive because all the developers and institutions had frozen activity in a panic.
From the moment we saw it, we knew that building a home accessing Appleton Street made sense for us and our family life. Appleton Access allows the front of the house to function as the front of the house. It reduces the distance to Connecticut Avenue by 200 plus feet. That's how we take our son to school, shop, take the metro, go to the park. It reduces each trip to the mailbox and trash and recycling by 600 plus feet. That's like walking from Appleton to Brandywine and back. It frees up street parking. It gives us direct access to grandma and our friends. It eliminates confusion for deliveries and guests. And it provides a safer structure to descend that steep slope.
So what exactly are we asking for today? A public space permit from DDOT will allow us walking and driving access to our largest street frontage along Appleton Street. David Landsman from CAST has joined us. David, can you give us a quick description of what we're looking at?
Sure. We're looking to install a single wide curb cut on Appleton Street. It'd be a typical DDOT concrete apron like you see all over Forest Hills and other neighborhoods. After the apron and the sidewalk section, we'll have a pervious paver driveway, completely pervious surface. and 2 retaining walls sort of flanking the hill to soften the grade and stabilize it. Those walls are in the 4 or 3.5 foot range, vary as they go across the frontage, but that's the maximum height. And then we'll have a lead walk leading to the front door. You can see on the east side of the diagram there. We're also planting a street tree between the lead walk and the new curb cut. All relatively straightforward, typical request for a single family home and within DDOT's regulations.
Thanks, David. So I just want to point out that adding curb cuts along this section as properties are subdivided and reworked has been happening regularly since Appleton and 31st were built much after the rest of the neighborhood, but in 1953. In fact, of the 15 sites that were made as of right for home building by the addition of these streets, 13 of those 15 have gotten their curb cuts between 1955 and 2019. This leaves just our property, which on this map is lot 818, and our neighbors Joel and Marjorie at lot 816. As our property is being subdivided, a curb cut to allow access via the 75-foot frontage on Appleton would be the same thing that all of these other properties have received. Now, as mentioned, when considering a curb cut, pedestrians, parking, and traffic is the key consideration. Appleton is a street that averages less than 5 cars per hour. Only 3% of the time is their car more than once every 5 minutes. So consider this the Brandywine that has one about every three a minute. Because of the hillside, there's no sidewalk to disrupt, and the curb cut would be in an existing no parking zone 20 feet from the nearest legal space. As mentioned, our driveway would add off-street spots, so the net is an improvement to parking. And because our curb cut is on the outside of the curve, there's no problem with sight lines for cars or pedestrians. So safety and parking are not going to be impacted by this. Now, as mentioned, another consideration is street trees. All of the tree work is permitted, and we have committed to the city arborist to replant the Appleton Street slope, as well as our whole site. We'll talk about that later. And we have paid over almost $20,000 into the DC State Forest Action Plans Trust Fund to pay for tree maintenance and plantings across the neighborhood and the city, in addition to what we'll pay to redo our own site. And as you'll hear more about in a minute, this is part of our larger commitment to significantly increasing the tree cover, net circumference, and diversity throughout our property. Now, I'm sure what people really want to know about is how this will all look. Really remarkably the same, except modern and neater. So this slide shows you the view before and after from up the street, the existing situation on the left and with our proposed new house on the right. And this slide shows you a view closer up. So you can see the replantings there on the right, as well as the sidewalk and curb cut, but again, very similar to the existing experience. So as I mentioned, we have our architect, Katarina Ferrara, our builder, John Thompson, David, our civil engineer, and also Kevin Campion, our landscape architect with us today. But I wanted to pause and see if the ANC had questions about the curb cut issues at this point before we go into any bigger issues.
Any questions from my commissioner colleagues? I'm not hearing any questions, Mr. Harrison. So if you have, is there more to your presentation?
Yeah, well, we're prepared to speak more to the bigger picture as an introduction. We asked Commissioner Mehta to put us on the agenda for November to talk about our zoning variance requests. So we can introduce the project a little more broadly if it makes sense at this point.
I think let's hold that till November. I mean, again, I think the action before us, really, the question before us is the curb cut, understanding that yes, there's the issue of the home and homes, but that's a future item, not a tonight's item. So if there's nothing else from you, Commissioner Mehta, anything else, if there's no questions from my fellow commissioners, I think we'll open it up to the floor. I see, I know this isn't the right name. Somebody called iPad Mini has raised their hand. So whoever identifies it.
Yes,
Okay.
this is Lucy Patton, and that's iPad Mini Me. So we live on the corner of Appleton and 31st Street. So we are right across pretty much where this curb cut is going to be. And not quite across, but they're a little bit above us. So we're kind of sloped downwards from where the curb cut is going to be. I guess we have some concerns and we don't have any information yet about this, is two things. One is there are a lot of cars coming down there really fast. And we've lived there now for 11 years. So we do know that. This morning, as we were coming out of our garage, somebody was coming down really fast again down there. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think this to us, we just want to know more about how that's going to be alleviated. But one of the important things also is, I'm not sure I understand yet, or my husband and I, my husband's not on this call, but if they're taking out, I'm assuming they're going to take out some of the slope to build this curb cut and subsequently a garage. Currently, at least in the past few years already, there's been, water coming down and then it becomes ice, in the winter. And so we want some information as to how that is that going to have an adverse effect in because of the whole water management, because of the spring down there, will taking off, big part of the slope, make more water come down, Appleton. We are below where the Harrisons are, so we will be affected. It ices up on certain parts of Appleton right now. So in a way, compared to the neighbors on Albemarle Street, we actually will be more directly impacted by this whole curb cut issue in terms of, there's been a lot of discussions in the emails about water management on Albemarle, but we're also concerned on the Appleton side about water, how water is going to affect, us down there in on that side, particularly as we are just right after where the curb cut is going. It slopes downward. So it's definitely going to affect us, the Freeling houses next door, and other houses down the hill. So the water management is a big issue for us, just as a concern, without getting much information about it. We have the concern about how that's going to affect it. Secondly, again, we talked about the traffic, and I don't also know what we meant by more off-site parking, because currently we don't have another house there facing that will try to, get parking if you have guests or whatever. This will just, so there's just some concerns right now. Yes, Max?
So you've raised some concerns, I guess, and some of them are in the form of questions. I think one of them I thought was addressed by the presentation, but I don't mind asking the applicant to restate that in terms of the traffic concerns. I think some of the stormwater concerns and drainage issues, these are really going to be issues that are part of the next phase. So I'd like to, I know I should have said this in the introduction. Let's try to keep the questions as much as possible.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think the water management issue is a next phase issue, because building that curb cut will probably entail taking some of that slope away. And then that's why they have to rebuild some. I don't know how much that retaining wall is going to prevent more water from coming down there. So right now it's a concern, because we don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure from what I listened to that I really got an answer. You might have a lot more understanding of what he said than I did, but I certainly did not.
So let's let him answer these two concerns, and then we'll go to the next question.
Okay.
Please.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Lucy, for bringing that up. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk about this beforehand. And I will just note that I believe we've been very open and available to everybody. So if folks have other questions that are not addressed during this, please come to us. So the two questions, first on the traffic, I think I still have the PowerPoint up. I'll just note that we use our car maybe once every other day. So in terms of the overall traffic levels and the way that people can see around the corner, et cetera, and any parking, our curb cut won't change that. However, I do agree with you from spending hours and hours watching video of people driving past this, that this corner could use some engineering. And I'd love the ANC to put this on the traffic calming list, because people do cut that corner. So in this picture, you can see the car coming on the right side, but people will cut the corner going the other way. And it probably is a good place for some improvements. But again, it's very low traffic compared to, for example, Van Ness, the street that was brought up earlier, or everything else around.
Even compare it.
And then in terms of the impact of adding the curb cut and the cut into the hill to do the driveway on stormwater, maybe I can go back to David and his explanation about how this will actually significantly improve water management on our property. I wasn't really aware that there was an ice issue on Appleton from anything coming off of our property other than water running down through here through the general neighborhood. But David, do you have a second?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll be taking a hillside that is steeply sloped. We're going to soften the slope with retaining walls, which will slow runoff to a degree. And the surfaces that we're adding for vehicular passage or the driveway will be a pervious surface and won't result in any runoff. Further, the private property portion, which I know we're not talking about, but currently right now it's an uncontrolled site. It's a house that predates stormwater management. What we'll be putting in for private property will limit or prevent any offsite runoff. So the net runoff to Appleton will be a negative for sure, based on those two reasons, our on-site treatment as well as our pervious pavement in the driveway.
So you don't feel like taking out that hill or parts of that hill will result in the water coming down, more water coming down Appleton. There are icy spots right now.
Not on our subject property. Like I said, it will be softening the slope and the driveway itself. We'll be taking out some of the hill. That is correct, but it'll be taking out the hill and putting in a pervious pavement section designed to soak water, not run it off. The current hill, as it's sloped, probably has limited absorption capabilities just based on the slope. But putting in a pervious surface with less slope results in less runoff.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question. I see in my screen, there's an M. Lee with their hand raised. It looks like it's a couple. So you've got the floor and try to, if you can, keep it, get to a question, and you've got up to, a couple minutes to make it. So floor is yours. Still can't hear you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm Mary Lee, and it's my husband, Martin O'Hara. We live at 3005 Albemarle Street. And I just wanted to echo the letter that Commissioner Maida adverted to in her introduction. And that was a letter written by concerned neighbors. And it was submitted in August to the ANC and to Commissioner Maida, and then finally posted on the ANC website for everyone to read on October 12th. And in that letter, we highlight, in addition to the stormwater management issues, as Commissioner Maida mentioned, we also prominently emphasize in that letter a process issue. And that's really what I wanted to talk about tonight. And that is the process of the ANC hearing this development plan of 3007 Albemarle in a piecemeal fashion. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And we neighbors we expressed this concern in the letter. And we wanted to note that really the driver for this project is the request for variances from zoning regulations. And the entire development project of 3007 Albemarle is a matter that affects not only adjacent neighbors, we who signed the letter, and others, but also the entire Forest Hills community. Therefore, it's critical that the process of approval be done carefully, considering the complexity of the planned development in the context of the pre-existing water management problems, as well as the zoning regulations prohibiting this development. So we asked in this letter, and I just wanted to echo now and emphasize now, that the ANC considered deferring their approval of the curb cut until they review the project as a whole. Moreover, the draft water management plan, which is all we really know about the water management to date, or at least before this meeting, has not been vetted or reviewed by DC government experts. So we wonder what the rationale is for the ANC to approve a curb cut for a project that requires a variance before the ANC takes a position on the variance itself. So the applicant now has filed their application for a variance with the BZA. And so we feel that there's no reason why the ANC should exceed in a piecemeal fashion, taking this approach with their review, because doing so may be construed that the ANC is giving some kind of tacit approval, perhaps, to the project as a whole, including the variance request. So that's all I wanted to emphasize about this letter that we submitted.
Okay.
And wanted to just emphasize that because Commissioner Mehta was kind enough to mention this letter. And that was just a major point made in the letter, and I just wanted to emphasize that.
Thanks.
So thank you.
Your objective was successful. You've made your point. Thanks.
Commissioner Chairman Christile, Mr. Hirschfeld has his hand up raised.
I can't get this off.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Christile. I appreciate this, and I appreciate the opportunity to voice an opinion from a neighbor who's not directly impacted by the planned development. However, I have a couple of questions, and I want to be clear and quick here. I live perhaps 200 feet away from this proposed curb cut. My driveway, which faces 31st Street, is my only access from my house. So I'm very familiar with the route going down 31st across Appleton. My first question is, who did the traffic study that Mr. Harrison has beautifully presented to us? And I'm concerned because if it's his cameras that are addressing this and his count of cars, then perhaps, as I mentioned to Commissioner Mehta, a real traffic study needs to be done, because I've lived here for 25 years and I've watched numerous situations occur that involve traffic, et cetera, and in the winter, the ice issues. That was question one. My second question is, and these aren't questions, these are observations, if I may be honest. Mr. Harrison presented a video of a proposed view of the new house that would be going up in place of the existing house there, which my understanding is that would be his residence, and that the other residence proposed for this development is something to be sold on the open market. From my rudimentary view of that, I didn't see a curb cut that was put into that. So I think it would be appropriate for Mr. Harrison to either put that back up or address that issue, since it doesn't seem to be very obvious. There we go. Okay, so could you show, where's the curb cut?
So, hi, Max, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
If you look in the right-hand corner there, where you see there's a woman pushing a stroller, and in that rendering, that's where the curb cut actually is.
Okay, but I do this for a living, so I really don't, I see a curb there, but I don't see a cut in the driveway. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So since we're discussing this directly, is this your traffic study, Mr. Harrison?
So, correct. So I did the traffic study watching camera footage, and then I went out and I sat outside and did double checking to make sure that the camera was indeed collecting everything. I've also gone out several times and just watched traffic flows in general. So yes, that is the answer.
And would you mind telling me why you have a camera facing that way, or is that not germane to this discussion?
Actually, Ms. Hernandez at 3009, Albemarle suggested that as we develop this project, we should put in place security cameras as people, when they see construction, et cetera, happening, will tend to do that. So I put that camera there on the slope. For that purpose. We do enjoy seeing when the foxes and the raccoons and other animals come through. So we have a bit of wildlife cam there. But otherwise, and it was helpful to, because we do have a walkway up to our home. In the current situation from there, it's very makeshift. As my wife mentioned, it's hard for my 81-year-old mother to navigate. But we do see that as a way in and out of our property right now. So we wanted to keep an eye on that.
I appreciate that. Well, frankly, once the ice starts, since you haven't maybe experienced the serious ice issues we have there, you might reconsider how you take your mother-in-law away from the property. And since there is a driveway in place, and as Commissioner Mehta has suggested, she seems to feel that I am endorsing people crossing a busy sidewalk on Albemarle Street versus people crossing a street that has no sidewalks like Appleton. And to be frank with you, I do endorse that. I think that a street like Appleton, where there are no sidewalks, a quick note here, I've lived here 25 years. When we first moved here, there was no sidewalk on Brandywine. There were asphalt curbs in place on these houses. And due to the strenuous efforts that we took over several years, we had a sidewalk installed on Brandywine on the other side, as well as normal curbs. So these are things that really will help impact the decision to put a curb cut in there. I just have one more thought here, and again, this is not really a question, but it's an observation. I do suggest, and I've suggested to Commissioner Mehta, that a real official DDOT traffic study is done before any decision is made. And I don't know how that will impact your recommended decision this evening, but I do think that that's the norm when it comes to the city deciding on things that are as potentially contentious as a curb cut in a neighborhood that is as busy as this has gotten. I have one more question, and that relates to the sort of exacerbated issue relating to the water that we're all familiar with in this neighborhood. I think it may be premature for your consultant to precisely know what happens were you to be allowed to have the curb cut, to know exactly what's going to happen due to the water and ice. None of us over all these years know what the water has, where it comes from, and exactly where it goes. And if someone can help me understand, that would be great. But frankly, I've been hearing about this as long as I've been living here, so that I think that the water management study fully impacts what happens on that property, forgetting what's going to happen in the future were this development to be allowed to go forward. So I'm suggesting that the removal of trees right now at the intersection of Appleton and 31st Street might be presumptuous as to the fact that this may indeed be endorsed by the ANC.
But all those trees have been cut off down already.
Commissioner Crystal, can I address two quick things?
Sure. Let's. I think Mr. Hirschfield, you got two questions, which again are pretty similar to questions that I've asked before. So yes, go ahead, Mr. Harrison.
I just recalled something, and I know Mr. Brent Lee is also on the call. One issue with this corner was that there was a leaking water supply line there that was recently repaired. So there was water coming up out of the street pretty consistently from a DC WASA error that's been fixed in the last year. So let's all hope that that has a significant impact on icing in the winter. I also just want to highlight something, which is that our ability to build on this site and to build basically the physical footprint that we're asking for is completely within the zoning. The only thing that we'll be asking for with the variance, in fact, we could build something, or the developer, if they had outcompeted us, could have built something twice as big. So the only issue that we'll be talking about at the zoning discussion is whether this can be 2 homes versus 1 large home or a home in an ADU. So I just want to highlight that we do not need any permission from the ANC or the BZA to build on this site. The only thing we need is for the ability to subdivide and build 2 homes.
But excuse me for interrupting, but doesn't the DDOT relatively firmly endorse the fact that when there's an existing driveway, that it can be a shared driveway?
So there are other sites in the neighborhood. For example, I believe it's a site up on Gates Road that was developed and a curb cut was brought in, and they did have a driveway back to Grant behind it, and that was just turned into a walkway. So our ability to access this curb cut as a design element is allowed. I also do want to note, to your question about the traffic study, this permit goes through significant multi-level review at multiple agencies, including DDOT, for traffic safety and other issues. So there are city experts looking at this in addition to the ANC.
Great. That's really good to know. I fully appreciate that, and I know your due diligence is accurately being addressed. But ultimately, if you reverse that argument, there are several properties on Albemarle Street that are serviced by 1 driveway, and so I can think of 2 alone on the block between 30th and 28th. So that I think that ultimately the precedent has not been established that a curb cut should be allowed simply to allow a substantial, from what I understand from the drawing, an 8,000 square foot house to be built in place of what certainly looks to be more like a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot house. So that in the end, I think that the overriding impact here involves not just we neighbors, but ultimately a number of people surrounding the property in question. So
thank you, Mr. Hirschfield.
Thank you very much.
So next we have, I've got Kevin Bata. You're on deck. You're on.
Yeah, that's Kevin Bate. I'm at 2700 Chesapeake Street. So I guess first question for Mr. Harrison, or maybe his engineer. I've noticed there's a place on Brandywine below Linian, south, down the hill from Linian. There's on Albemarle. There's a lot of places where there's springs or something that's creating some sort of constant water issue that creates ice on the street. So I understand that the lot that you've built, the lot that you've bought has some, maybe there was water flowing off of that. But if you develop the property, I assume that you're going to have professional or some sort of water drainage as part of your plan. So my thinking, and I want to know, I assume this is right, but you would be it's having someone who goes into an undeveloped site or a site that hasn't been developed in many, many years, and then addresses water on the site. It's going to make it better, not worse. That just sort of seems intuitive to me, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And so David can speak to this really quickly, but it is a critical point that we are designing this site, and this is the broader issue, to dramatically exceed what's required. We do have a situation here where we have a lot of water coming onto this property from uphill, but we want making sure we're managing and addressing that. So David, do you want to can you talk really quickly about the standards that the city requires, and I can put up the broader plan here real quick. I mean, we're getting off the topic of the curb cut.
Yeah, I apologize. I know that water management, I think, maybe not be germane to this, but it's been brought up and it was of interest to me because I mean, on down Brandywine, it's a real pain. And my neighbors, I asked them about it and they said, there's nothing, we can't figure it out. So.
Yeah, maybe Dave, talk about the general
Sure.
standards, what we have to comply with.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a good comment, Kevin. I mean, I think when we approach a site like this, knowing sort of the historical pieces, like you mentioned, it's wet often, it gets a lot of offsite drainage from the north. We're going to strive to go above DC required standards, and that's sort of what we're working towards now. The plan you're looking at on the screen is our, in progress draft. But what we're trying to recreate is separate stormwater facilities, spreading them throughout the property to create better hydraulics, and also sort of embracing the water flow through the property, not ignoring it or pretending like it's not going to be there, but taking it and giving it a place to go. So sort of on a high level, that's sort of the channel you see running through the middle. We're creating a bioretention at the bottom of that as a large storage facility for those flows, something that can be designed for capacity, unlike what's there now, and also worked into the landscape so it's in a more controlled manner as opposed to what's there now, which is sort of a backup and a MOG. We're still working on our calculations and finalizing the plan. Obviously, this is iterative and we are here for the driveway, but our calculations are coming in about double what DC would require right now. They're somewhere in the, I want to say 2,000 cubic feet range that we'd be required, and we're hitting right around 4,000. I don't want to give hard numbers, but our goal is to exceed it, not by a little bit. So the net result, to your point, Kevin, you're taking a site that doesn't have any stormwater management right now. It's got stormwater issues. We're not only offsetting for our proposed improvements or our proposed impervious surfaces, but we're offsetting and taking off some of that drainage that is already there. So I think the net result is a positive because we are developing, and because, Paul's committed to doing additional work, and, we recognize that additional work has to be done. It's not an optional exceeding the requirement. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or led to
No, that answers the question. And I live on a cul-de-sac on Chesapeake Street, and I know my neighbor recently put in a curb cut, and I saw it as a good thing from my standpoint, because that's they'll park their car in their driveway, their new driveway, as opposed to on the street. Of course, a cul-de-sac is not a busy, it's not, the traffic's not as big of an issue. Although when I commute out of the neighborhood, I avoid your street, Paul, because it's less efficient to go around that bend and then turn left to get to Albemarle than it is to go down 30th or one of the other streets. So I'm surprised. I'm not sure I follow the traffic implications, in that there's not going to be, this is not going to, a driveway, in my view, wouldn't increase the amount of traffic, I guess, other than maybe your car and maybe an occasional guest. So I didn't understand the traffic concerns.
Excuse me.
But yes.
I'm sorry, I know this is a discussion. We've got a couple of people that want to ask some questions, and so.
Yeah. Well, I would just say, I'll just close and say, I'm glad that a family is moving there and building a house, and I know that's not about the house, although it seems to be, that's what most people's concern is, rather than a developer. So, I would, support it based on what I know.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thanks for your testimony. Commissioner Wall, you had a question. I think I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Castillo. I have a question, and also I wanted to address Mr. Hirschfeld's comment around the traffic study. My question is to the applicant around the curb cut, and just to give you a chance to answer, there was a comment earlier about why advance the curb cut this month when the variance is coming next month versus doing those together. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wall. So as Nez pointed out at the beginning, we know that asking for a variance is far from guaranteed, and we've been working with our neighbors as hard as we can to be as accommodating as possible. Again, even though what we're proposing is actually, we're really seeking, we're seeking flexibility to be able to build well under half of what a developer could build. and we want to do twice as much as we need to do. But the curb cut and the access from that side is something that makes sense for this site, regardless of what is built. So we think it makes sense to bring it up now. We also, let's just face the reality of dealing with the District of Columbia, many levels of permits. There's a lot of stuff to get done to do this project. One of our goals is to build this project quickly and efficiently with as little impact on our neighbors as possible. So you do the permits in the order that they're available to you. So we don't see any reason to wait, since I believe that the majority of the concerns are about the stormwater issues and the second house on the eastern site. And it's completely separate from the question of whether it's appropriate to have a curb cut on Appleton Street.
Thank
Can I
you.
also say one other thing really quickly about Mr. Hirschfield's presentation and also the raising of the letter? One of the big issues we have with the letter is the assertion that this house is 8,000 square feet, which is not correct in any calculation. And in fact, the house, and we'll get into this more next time, but the house we're proposing is right in the range of the scale, height, and mass and footprint of its neighbors, and in many cases smaller. So 8,000 feet, there's no number where it's 8,000 feet. If you include the basement and the attic, you're at 6,700, but most of the homes in that surrounding area are the same or larger.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to address the point around the traffic study. I don't think that this one curb cut, in my opinion, will create a major difference in traffic on Appleton and 31st. That said, if there are dangerous conditions today, if there's speeding that's happening on Appleton or 31st, and if there's measures that could be done regardless of this effort to improve pedestrian safety, visibility, whatever it might be, to make Appleton and 31st, I think that there should be a traffic safety assessment request. Those are effective. DDOT can be slow sometimes, but as I mentioned in one of our previous meetings, we pursued a TSA for the sidewalk crossing across Brandywine and Forest Hills Park, and DDOT approved that, and that's in design. It's going to be implemented to help make that stretch of Brandywine slightly safer for pedestrians coming out of the park. So it is possible to have DDOT conduct these studies and to have them result in design of interventions to improve safety here in our neighborhood. So, I would be happy to help support that study in terms of Appleton and 31st to make sure that there aren't any other interventions we could do to make that area safer. But again, I don't think this particular curb cut, exacerbates conditions greatly from what's already there. So I think we should move forward with that study. But again, I don't think this discussion or decision needs to be held up for that study. But I do want to support that to Max and Nina, as well as Lucy, who raised the traffic concerns there.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Wall. I think we have one more question, and then I know there's a question from Commissioner Nemeth, and then I think we're gonna wrap this up. So I don't know who else out there had their hand up.
I had my hand up. If it's appropriate,
go.
I could come in now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
You're welcome.
My name is Paolo Mauro. I live at 4512 30th, so I'm one of the adjacent properties. And I really appreciate this very nice presentation. I just have one question. And my question is, if there is this curb cut, then the house will have two entry points. Is that allowed? Is it common in properties to have two access points? Thank you. By the way, Mr. Harrison mentioned that he expects he'll use it only once in a while. So I understand it might be convenient, but two access points for one house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Mr. Harrison, it's up to you. The question.
Yeah, so my understanding is that as a consideration that DDOT will do. This is the intention for us to make this our primary access to our home. If we're driving our car in and out of here, that's where we're going to focus. I know there are many homes in this neighborhood that have 2, sometimes even 3 curb cuts, many in our surrounding blocks. But our intention here is to have our vehicular access to the new home that replaces our current home be through this frontage. So the second house, the one that we want to build, focusing on Albemarle, would have access through the existing pipe stem that's shared with Ms. Lee and Ms. Hernandez. We do own that, although they have right of way to travel it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harrison. I think we have one question, Commissioner Nemeth. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And Mr. Harrison, my question is this. So you're going before zoning, and you had mentioned, so I guess, is my understanding that you're going in front of zoning purely for getting a subdivision to subdivide the property, or is there another request that you are making for any other exceptions?
So we are going before the zoning commission for the BZA, I'm sorry, for a subdivision into 2 lots that substantially exceed the minimum, so we can build a second house on the Albemarle access. We are also asking for the Appleton facing house to be allowed to be built the same distance from Appleton as our current house is. Because of a quirk in the zoning rules, if we don't do this game that people play in this neighborhood where they keep up the foundation and then build a completely new house on top of it, we'd have to move the new home back either 4 or 7 feet. And that would push us closer to a couple of beautiful trees of significance that we're working really hard to keep and treasure. So we want to keep the house on the same footprint as relations to Appleton as it is now. That's the second variance.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nemeth. I think we've had a pretty, for a curb cut, we've had a pretty lengthy.
Excuse me, Commissioner Castillo, I see 2 people with their hands up, and I would very much like to ensure that that we hear from the folks who, and I believe those are all both adjacent neighbors. I'd like to make sure that they get an opportunity to speak.
David, you're on mute.
Thanks. Now I'm not muted now, right? Great.
I know.
So I see a hand. It's Zuzana Murgasova. You've got a couple minutes, and if it's a question that's already been asked, I ask you not to ask that. Ask something that's new, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I would like to actually make a point. I do not agree with Mr. Harrison's view that the request for a curb cut is unrelated to the requests for the variance, for the zoning and the second house. These 2 issues, in our view, are very closely related. I think that was stated also in the letter from the neighbors. The only reason for a second curb cut is really to be able to build the second house. Unless that permit is given, the second driveway does not seem appropriate. So I would like to emphasize the point that Mary Lee and Martin O'Hara mentioned, that these 2 permits should be considered as a part of package and not in a piecemeal manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murgazova. Thank you. Next we have, I'm not sure, I can't see who's next, but you've got the floor. Welcome.
I don't see any other raised hands there, David. I think she was it.
Actually, I see Ms. Hernandez's hand is raised.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're out there. You got a couple minutes.
Okay, I'll be quicker than that. First of all, I just want to clarify that I did not say to put up cameras. I did pose a question to the Harrisons back when I first learned about their plans as to what type of security would be in place when construction begins, just because I do share that driveway and, you know, I live here and, you know, I just want to be sure, especially given all the recent incidents that have happened around in our neighborhood. And so I just want to clarify that. And their answer was that they were going to put up cameras when construction began. Secondly, I also would like to echo the sentiments that really there's two different variances that need to be considered. And with the curb cut, and it's not just the curb cut, it's the opening to the development with the variance for the setback relief, as well as for the proposed second home not having the street frontage. Anyway, that's all I have to say, because I think everyone else has covered everything, so thanks.
Thanks for your clarification and concern. And now the matter is with us as commissioners. Commissioner Nemeth, you asked a question. Commissioner Wall, you have a question. Anybody else have a question for either the applicant or any of us?
Commissioner Castillo, now seems like a good time to read a note that I was asked to read from a neighbor who was unable to make the meeting tonight, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. The neighbor is Joel Swerdlow. Joel and Marjorie live, actually their house will be closest to the curb cut of any house, of any resident. Joel's email reads, and I'm reading this directly. Our family moved here in 1986, adjacent to what has been until now a large piece of land neglected by an absentee owner. The situation had to inevitably end. I have made an effort to get to know Nez and Paul and their son William, and I think they will be wonderful next door neighbors, friends, and members of the community. They must solve their property's water problems while not creating new ones, and work to enhance the tree canopy and sense of specialness that define our neighborhood, and seem committed to spending the time, energy, and money necessary to do so. In my experience, Paul and Nez listen and work to address concerns such as screening, noise, land integrity, and trees. Signed, Joel Swerdlow, 3045 Albemarle.
Thank you, Commissioner Mehta. Any questions from any of my fellow commissioners? Hearing none. I mean, again, we've had a lengthy discussion. I think we've heard the concerns about why this is together or not together. And I mean, I'll speak for myself. I think I'm relatively comfortable with this going as a two-step process, understanding the concerns that have been raised. So I guess I'll entertain a motion from somebody, from a fellow commissioner.
I would like to make a motion to approve the applicant's permit for a curb cut.
This is Commissioner Appa. I second the motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion from Commissioner Mehta in support of the curb cut application, and we've got a second from Commissioner Appa. All those in favor of this motion to support, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? And so my understanding is this motion to support the applicant's curb cut, it passes unanimously 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, and thank you, neighbors, for coming. And for those that are interested.
Yeah, Commissioner Castillo, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may, I'd like to add a few words to the end of this. I know a lot of words have been said, but this is, I'd like to share some of my thoughts on how some of this process has unfolded and some of the thinking that I have applied to this along with my fellow commissioners. Can I have a couple of moments, please?
A couple minutes, you got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, you know, as I'm sure you can all imagine, I have received a ton of input on this process, the substance and the process and how it played out. Many of the comments I received initially were along the lines of people being concerned around the impact of the project on their views, the disruption of having a construction site next door, concern about the size of the new home and how big it is, how much bigger it is than their home, et cetera. And even the desire to buy a portion of the existing driveway and the like. Those are natural and understandable concerns. I get that. I can relate personally to them because I have lived through many construction projects in Forest Hills near my house over the years. Those are not, however, the types of concerns that the ANC can take into account in its assessment of the proposed project. There were other concerns raised about the impact of the proposed project on water runoff and potential impact on adjacent properties. And that is something that the ANC can and should take into account. So I delayed the ANC's consideration of the Harrison's proposed curb cut and asked them to address those issues as a preview and in the spirit of demonstrating good faith going forward. In my view, they have adequately addressed the concerns around the curb cut and will, I hope, in good faith, continue to demonstrate commitment to the ideals that they discussed tonight around water management and tree canopy. But we're not going to take their word for it. The applicants will return in November to ask for the variances around their project. I also want to acknowledge that I realize a number of neighbors are unhappy with the result and unhappy with me because they think I should have tried to delay or block the project because of concerns that were raised. Some of those concerns are simply not the type that I can take into account, nor should the ANC take into account, as I made clear. Some of the concerns turned out to be not to be an issue because the facts don't support the concern. For example, one concern was that the curb cut would lead to the loss of parking spaces. I received that concern in an email. But the location of the curb cut is a current no parking zone, so no spaces will be lost. And for others, I had to balance whether it was worth the time and expense and delay and further study against the merits of the concern raised, such as traffic safety. You may disagree with my assessment or how I balance the considerations on any of the issues raised, but I urge you guys, all of you, everyone who has weighed in, and especially those who have done so with a fair amount of vitriol to which I believe the applicants have been subject to take a step back and put yourselves into the shoes of the Harrisons or even the ANC commissioners who have to look at these matters objectively and take into account the precedent. I know it's hard to get no for an answer and frustrating to not get what you want, especially in a place like this where people are used to having their way. The temptation can be to yell louder, or worse, when your perspective doesn't prevail, to ultimately not being constructive or set the right tone for future interactions among neighbors. So I urge everyone as we move forward in evaluating what the future brings around this site to be understanding of different perspectives and to keep a civil tone for the benefit of the neighborhood. Personally, I believe that there is absolutely a potential for a win-win here. A site that's been abandoned and where water management has been completely ignored can actually result in a site where water management is contained and start to address issues around private properties that are receiving water from 3007 and from other properties actually, and into public spaces that are being iced over during the winter months because of water that is flowing in an uncontained manner. So that's sort of, I hope that gives some insight onto, it doesn't begin to capture, frankly, the number of emails and conversations and documents and the amount of energy that has been put into this behind the scenes over the months. But I do hope that you will trust this has been carried out in good faith and without any sort of bias or other motives as we round the bend to the next phase of what I believe the applicants will be coming to consider in front of the ANC in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mehta. All right, so we're moving from curb cuts to money. Commissioner Wall, who's our treasurer, you have the floor to talk about the FY22 ANC3F budget.
Thank you, Chairman Castile. Hopefully this will be less contentious, but for FY22, we're proposing fairly minimal changes in our budget from FY21. I want to talk through those changes and the overall proposal for the year. The first change is to increase our budget for personnel from $11,000 to $18,000. That budget will go toward continuing to improve our website and better maintaining our website so that the community can receive information in more real time, as we move forward with lots of different actions, as well as, to the extent possible, revamping that website to make it a little bit more user friendly. That will also go towards supporting us from a technology standpoint. I expect that in the course of the next 6 to 12 months, that we'll be moving from virtual meetings to some form of hybrid meetings. That's going to take more labor to manage those meetings and make sure that people can get into the meetings, like the troubles that we have had with regard to Zoom. So having someone who can better support us as it relates to our technology platform to make sure that we enable better meeting access, all that will be supported by an increased personnel budget and to help continue to make the ANC operate more professionally. The second change is around grants. This past year, we had a couple, actually one somewhat extraordinary grant in our support to Van Ness Main Street, which was very, very much due and well appreciated for the benefit of the neighborhood. But given the fact that we do have limited savings, it's not something that we can do every year. So I'm actually proposing that we reduce our grants budget. Last year, the budget was 7,000, reducing it to 5,000. Again, to make sure that we are investing in those grants and grantees who are putting forth proposals that will provide maximum benefit to the community. So a slight reduction there. That slight reduction also enables us to reduce the amount of money that we're transferring from savings. The total budget will be $29,000 for FY22, but we get a district allotment of $18,000. So, at some point we're going to deplete our savings. So by beginning to reduce our budget year over year, it gets us down closer to the district allotment and ensures that future commissioners will have some degree of savings and cushion to operate business. I don't think the personnel boost to 18,000 will be a permanent boost. I think we need to invest in upgrading our platforms this year and putting some standards around how we operate so that future years that cost can go down as it relates to how we do our business. So that is the proposed budget. After we'll post this to our website as well so the community can see, but again, the only major change is boosting the personnel budget up to allow for this enhanced support to the ANC. We've also added one additional item it's under purchase of service, and this is to support a proposal that we've discussed as an ANC to have an outside coach facilitator provide training to the ANC that would enable us to function better as an ANC so we can better deliver our service and support to the community and be more efficient and effective in doing so. So we've also added $3,000 to support that consultant being able to provide us advice during the course of the year. And that completes the proposed budget for 22.
Thank you, Commissioner Wall. Questions from my colleagues?
Yes. How much is the allotment from DC government to the ANC annually again, please?
It's $18,392. We currently have $60,000 in our bank. So again, we can't continue to operate at a deficit because in 5 years we'll have nothing. So the increase this year enables us to become more efficient, become more effective, but we will absolutely need to bring our budget down to that $18,000 to be able to sustain ourselves over time, barring an increase in allotment from the district.
Thanks.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt our FY22 budget.
I'll move.
Okay, we'll take a motion from the treasurer and a second from Commissioner Nemeth. Does that work?
Sure.
Great. We have a motion and we have a second Time for vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? I think that was unanimous, 7-0. Thank you, Commissioner Wall. And we have a budget, so that's great. And so the next item on our agenda is, Commissioner Nemeth, this is you. It's the Italian Bar, 5008 Connecticut Avenue. This is a new liquor license. So Commissioner Nemeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Castile. And I'll just do a brief introduction, then I'll turn it over to, let me just do the brief introduction. So we have a request for a liquor license for the Italian Bar, which is to be located at 5008 Connecticut Avenue. It is a part of Americano, or at least I guess we call it the sister establishment of Americano, and they are looking to open up a cafe of sorts. And I noticed that Carolyn from Americano is here, and Sidon, their attorney, is here. So I will turn it over to them to give us the details. Welcome, Carolyn.
Hi, good evening. And I am here with Carolyn Fetty, and from the Veritas Law Firm, and we are assisting with the liquor license and the sidewalk cafe application. So what is before you all this evening is just the APRA portion of it. So this is a new CR license, and it is, in terms of what we've been placarded for, it is 18 as the occupancy load inside, 18 for the sidewalk cafe. And our hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for inside and 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. outside. I'll have Carolyn introduce herself and tell you a little bit about the concept, and maybe tell you a little bit about the food and the gelato that you'll be offering.
So as some of you might know, a bar in Italy is where you get your morning espresso and cappuccino. There's no exit in the building, and there are no tables indoors. So we're doing a stand-up style bar. We're going to make all the gelato on premise, and then the front window will be walk up for gelato that you can order and pay for from the street to the front window. When you come inside, you can pay at the cash register for a panino. You can pay for a cappuccino, an espresso. There'll be American coffee, cold brew, and there will be liquor and alcohol, but it's like a tertiary aspect to the concept, more like an aperitif or digestif that you would get before or after coming to our restaurant. And then maybe like a small beer or half bottles of wine that you might sit outside with, but we're not going to do martinis or anything like that. More Aperol spritz, just kind of light beverages. And I think it's mainly going to be about the coffee and gelato, which is what we intend it to be about. So.
And other than that, we are happy to answer any questions. And if there are no questions, we ask that the ANC support this application.
I do have one question. Are you asking for a stipulated license, or what is your calendar for opening?
Our protest petition deadline is December 13th, but we don't need a stipulated license.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other questions, any questions from any of the nearby residents? If there's no questions, any questions from my fellow commissioners? I can hear the crickets again. So hearing no questions, sorry, I know this is getting old. I promise I'll ditch this one. So I'd like a motion to support this, approve this application, support this application.
Motion to approve.
Americano has been a great asset to the neighborhood, and I move that we support this application. I think this will be a great addition to the block.
I second that.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Nemeth and a second by Commissioner Mehta. Ready for vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously 7-0. Thank you,
Thank you, commissioners.
Hannes, and good luck. We want much success.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, that ends the action item portion of our agenda. Now it's time we do information items. And I think we've got one information item, which is it's a draft resolution in favor of renaming Wilson High School. And so I'm gonna turn this over to Commissioner Tenderek, who's gonna introduce this. And if you wanna, if Ms. Donovan wants to speak as well, but the floor is yours, so.
Awesome, thank you so much. So last week, I was approached by Ruth Wattenberg, the Ward 3 State Board of Education rep, to write a bill in supporting the name of Wilson High School to turn into August Wilson High School. I know this has been an issue for the Wilson community for the past handful of years, and it's really been a discussion really the past couple of years too. And so I know that there was Commissioner in ANC3D who passed a bill regarding changing the name or supporting a bill to change the name to August Wilson as well. As you probably have heard, there's been a lot of change the past 48 hours, which makes my bill kind of all over the place. Mainly, the DC Council has been thinking about changing the name completely, not to August Wilson. I want to get the right name on this one to Jackson Reed High School. And the reason why is because it basically a combination of two different names: Edna Jackson, who was the first Black teacher at Wilson High School, and then also Vincent Reed, who was the school's first Black principal. And so I'm just going to share my screen and just show the draft bill I have currently. It's a pretty simple bill. So I just have it right over here for the most parts. And so currently it is the ANC supporting the name turned into August Wilson High School. And so this bill has kind of changed the past day or two. It has been over the news today, which I think shows like how fast all this stuff has changed. Keep in mind too that this bill might change completely, but it's basically a bill that says that we as the ANC support whatever name Wilson High School changes. So whether that is to August Wilson or whether that is to Jackson Reed High School. And so this is pretty much just the bill right here too. I'm interested to know if people have opinions about the name changes, if they support either or they're open to either. I've been hearing both sides. So sides for August Wilson, mainly for its convenience, we go from Woodrow Wilson to August Wilson, and also for people voting for Jackson Reed. And so I'm just curious if people in the public or also other commissioners have an opinion on the matter. I'm definitely in support of changing the name from Woodrow Wilson to a different name based on the race history of Woodrow Wilson. But I am curious to hear if people have thoughts on either name, if they support either, and we can sort of have a conversation. So if people have any thoughts or feedback on either sort of name, I'd be really happy to hear it.
We've got one thumbs up from somebody. Oh, there's a real thumbs up.
So for people that says thumbs up, are you for either name? Is there a name that you seem to like more? I think to me, I'm just really curious to hear people's thoughts, just because this has been a super recent change, really in the past day. So I'm curious if people have thoughts on either or of the name.
No, I haven't thought about it, just supportive of the change because of the history.
Thank you so much.
So Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tenderek, you shared the screen, and so just from a process perspective, I mean, if there's comments or questions, we can get back to those. But from a process question, this resolution is in a draft form, so as all the changes you're talking about, we can make changes, essentially up until the next meeting when we would put this up for a vote. So in terms of names and all that, I think that can be changed. And we'll just leave it at that. So just if you're interested, this will be on our website. And if you've got anything else to say, I know that I see a couple hands raised, so I'll.
Yeah, there's one hand raised.
stuff.
I see a hand from, I think, Mark.
So Mr. Minsker, the floor is yours. Up to 2 minutes. We're running a little bit late right now, so we'll try to.
Okay, yeah, I'm here for another reason. Thanks. I just want to, I gave a testimony in front of the city council why it should be Edna Jackson High School. I'm not going to go through all that. Chairman Mendelson was interested in why, although August Wilson has been pushed, he was interested in knowing the data because 68% of the faculty and staff at Wilson who were surveyed do not want it to be August Wilson. They would like it to be either Vince Reed or Edna Jackson or a combination. And so I spoke at the council hearing, which was broadcast. You can see it on YouTube if you just put in Chairman Mendelson Cal. And there is a overwhelming support for Edna Jackson and or Vincent Reed within the faculty and staff. The Beacon newspaper, which has been around for 80 years at Wilson. By the way, I'm a teacher at Wilson. And the Beacon has written an endorsement. They also want it not to be August Wilson. So within the community, within the immediate community of Wilson, there's a real push for it to be something other than August Wilson. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Minsker. And so, Mr. Commissioner Tanderek, you've got some. It sounds like you're going to have a little bit of work to do after tonight to figure this out. So that's fine. So I think I see next to Mr. Minsker on my screen is Ms. Ann Ingram. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be Jackson Reed because although August Wilson might be required reading for sophomores at Wilson High School, I don't think that's a reason to name the school after him. And both Edna Jackson and Vincent Reed had an enormous influence on the high school and on the students. And I think to name it after August Wilson is handy, but not significant. And I think it should be Jackson Reed or Jackson or Reed.
Thanks, Ms. Ingram. Any other questions? I see Commissioner Nemeth, you have your hand up. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So today the council decided they were going to just postpone a decision until there was going to be another public discussion about this, but I don't have any idea as to when that discussion would take place. And I don't know what their timeline is now with this. I don't know what necessarily the calendar pressure is, whether we have to have a decision one way or the other by November. I don't know if council plans on making this decision before the end of the year.
Yeah. I saw a tweet from Councilmember Henderson earlier, and it says that they're planning to do a second roundtable, but there has been no sort of timeline in regards to that.
So
I think that leaves us, we have options. We have a draft that's on the floor, and if it's ready for November based on everything above, we can vote on it. And if not, I guess it can wait.
So I agree. I mean, there's two ways we can take this. We can just simply have a resolution that says we support the name change, period, and let's make it happen. Because the overriding goal here is to just get rid of the name Woodrow Wilson. We all are in agreement that's got to go.
Yeah, and I would suggest, I'm sorry, Commissioner Nemeth, I thought you were done, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. And so we can have a resolution that just simply says, let's just make this happen without weighing in on a specific name in our resolution, or we wait just to see which way we should take it in terms of a name. But I don't think we're in a position right now to endorse a name.
Right, we have a draft resolution, so it can change from a name to no name.
And there's also the suggestion in the chat, Commissioner Castile, to table this topic at the moment on the basis of where the state of play is, which seems to be changing.
Sure, that's another option. So we have options on the table. I don't, are there any more questions about this or comments? And I do want to thank the teachers that showed up tonight from the current high school. It's great to see you in our community and at our meeting in particular. We've got a new schools and universities committee. And so if you're interested, Tavon Donovan was here with us. So we'd love to have you part of our efforts. But back to the
also as a teacher, I appreciate any other teacher on the call.
So from a process question, I'm open for options. We have one on the floor. We have either to keep this on the floor and it could change, or we can table it and bring it back in another form. And I'm at this hour with this much Zoom today, I'm a little agnostic.
Well, I think since we are not actually voting on a resolution tonight, there's no need to quote table it per se, because there's no vote being taken. So there's no action. This is just a draft that was presented. So it'll be a question of whether we actually put it on the agenda for November or not.
Yeah, and like I think for me, I think I want to contact more people from the Wilson community. So definitely, Mark, I'll reach out to you as well, just to get a sort of better idea of the situation happening. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with either tabling it, because I think in the past couple days it really has been like all over the news in DC, and so I think it's very clear that all of us are supportive changing it from Woodrow Wilson to another name. I mean, to me, I'm personally cool with either name as well. But I think to me, I want to follow like what the Wilson community is voting for. I think to me, like that's the most important part is like, what do people from Wilson say? And so I think to me as a commissioner, I'm able to support like what they're saying as well. So yeah, so I will, I think the past day or two has shown me, I think I got to read some more into it, which is not a bad thing. And then, I think in terms of either we vote next month or we table it, I think it also depends too on like whether or not there will be a public roundtable. I think that might change the timeline of everything too. But I will let you all know.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Tenderek. So we've heard Commissioner Tenderek, Mehta, and Nemeth. Commissioner Wall or Commissioner David or Commissioner Appa, anything to add to this?
No, this is Commissioner Appa. I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it might be worth just putting the draft on the website, even as is, and then we'd love to hear a public comment and sort of move from there.
It sounds like a plan. Commissioner Wall and my fellow commissioners, you okay with that? Staying the course? And we can either act on something in November or not. We have options, so those options remain. So thanks. Thank you for participating. Thanks, Commissioner Tenderek, for this draft, and stay tuned. So next on the agenda, we've got committee reports. And so I don't think I saw, Ms. Donovan, the chair of the Schools and Universities. Anything you want to add tonight? Report on the Schools and Universities Committee. The floor is yours.
Yes, so at our last meeting, we decided to leave the point of contact, Mr. James. I believe he had several schools under his wings already, and he made stable contact with the schools that he have under his wings, which are Howard, Hearst, and what was the other ones, James?
It was Howard, Hearst, Murch, and UDC.
And UDC, and myself and one of the other new members, she was not able to make it on tonight, was going to add Woodrow Wilson, and Dill to the list. I have not reached out to the schools yet, so by the next meeting, there should be some progress made. That's all I have.
Tavon, can I add one more thing as well?
Sure.
I will add that, so I did reach out to UDC, and I'm not too sure if Juanita is on the call, but she mentioned to me, so back in spring, the idea of having quarterly community task force meetings. And so I reached out an update regards that to her, and she reached out to me regarding, they're actually planning a meeting. It is next Thursday at the 28th. I'll try and put the link of it if I can in the comments or in the chat. But it basically is sort of like a community meeting with community of Van Ness in regards to how checking with UDC, what are plans UDC working with the community. And so If you're able to make it, that's awesome. But that was something that I reached out to Juanita about and sort of checking in because this seemed like a really great way to sort of engage with the community, like in Van Ness itself.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Tanderek. Actually, that's an outcome of the campus plan. And so the part of that campus plan and the agreement that we have with them, this is a little bit before your time, is we have an agreement with them to have these quarterly meetings about their, implementing their plan and other matters. So thanks for that reminder. It's 28th, so it's a week. It's a Thursday night. I think it's a Thursday night. Anyhow, you're right, Commissioner Tanderek. We can put that information up. It's important for people in the UDC and surrounding community to attend that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had one more question while everybody's here. I know at our last meetings, I discussed with James and he have given me some feedback and some resources, points of contact. I believe is Miss Gloria. Is she part of the Connecticut Avenue events that take place here?
Yes, I'm with Van Ness Main Street.
Oh, yes. Hi, Miss Gloria. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. So I wanted to put together, and this is just by, getting opinions, because this would be my first time trying to do this. I reached out to Parks and Recreation, and I always wanted to bring the community together, especially with children's and parents, at the park here on right up the street.
Forest Hills Park.
Forest
The
Hills
Forest
Park.
Hills Park.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yes. So I could, rent out, have access to that park. However, before I get the permit, I wanted to know what vendors can I bring to this parent and child event in order to bring the community together up in this area. And I wanted to hear your thoughts.
You want to hear Van Ness Main Street's thoughts?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
it's interesting. We can talk more offline, but I'm actually was talking to the head of the Forest Hills Park organization today. So I think it'd be better if we talked offline. But I mean, I'm not the permit person. I've never done anything in that park, so I'm really not the expert, but I'm happy to talk to you offline about what I spoke to them about today and what their future plans are.
Okay, I was looking more for like vendors, ideas for vendors to come out to the park. I already know how to get the permit. I already went to Parks and Recreation to see. I wanted to have it in November, second or third week of November, to get the neighborhood together. So I'm more like looking for vendors. I have the permit set, but I don't want to purchase the permit unless my plan is solid.
I think we need to talk, flesh out more. I don't understand what vendors. I mean, do you need lighting vendors? Do you need entertainment vendors? Do you need
entertainment, food, resources for parents and children, geared towards children or family oriented.
Yeah, I'd
activities.
have to, yeah, I'm not a children's events person, so we would have to talk offline.
Okay, sure.
Is that all right? Yeah, I do
Absolutely.
more like total family entertainment, but it just depends on budget too. I mean, I don't, what money do you have to spend too? So that will.
Okay, so we'll talk
Okay.
more online.
Yeah.
offline.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm gone Monday through November 9th. So if you're
Okay,
gonna try
I can
to do,
email you.
I'm gonna be gone when you are trying to do this. So
I think Ms. Garcia and Ms. Devon, I think you can, after the meeting, get together and kind of figure out a schedule. So
Sure.
yes,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Ms. Devon, and great work on the Schools and Educations Committee. So keep it up. All right, so we have Mr. Zach Tashman, who's the relatively new Housing and Neighborhoods Committee Chair. So the floor is yours.
Yes, the only thing on my end to report is that this Saturday, October 23rd, there's going to be a rally for affordable housing on the corner of Nebraska and Chesapeake, starting at 9 a.m. and going till noon. This is being organized by the students of, I guess, the school soon to formerly be known as Woodrow Wilson. And they definitely would hope to have some ANC representation there. And I'm going to just quickly drop the information into the chat. And the impetus of this rally is to highlight the historic nature of the Fort Reno area and how a lot of it was seized from African-American families at the turn of the century, back in the 1900s. And then, so this is a little bit of a housing justice along with more concrete affordable housing proposals. So we hope to all see you there.
Thank you, Mr. Tashman, for that. I think I don't see anybody, I don't see Mr. Dealing nor Erica Rosenberg from Parks and Wetlands, Watersheds and Streets and Sidewalks. Although Kathy Sykes, you want to give a quick 30-second Streets and Sidewalks? You don't have to. It's just
we have more work to do, that's for sure. We're going to try to figure out all the sidewalks that had been prioritized to be done, to get those fixed. I think we're planning to do some interaction with the two committees, with the Parks and Watershed, on trying to deal with the traffic calming opportunity of the pollinator corridor. That's to be determined, to see what we might be able to do. I would say pesticide calming too now, or something, to stop the spraying. But I think those are the major things. I think the Vision Zero, there was still some more movement on some issues, again, dealing with recent issues in the neighborhood, again, with speeding and lots of problems of not making any progress on addressing Vision Zero. That's my quickie.
Thank you, Kathy, Ms. Sykes. All right, so this is the time for those of you that are left and have any energy left or brain cells working. I'm sure that everybody who's here has brain cells. Oh, I see Gloria Garcia. Anything you want to add that you haven't said already from Van Ness Main Street, Ms. Garcia? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Castillo. I put it in the chat, but I wanted to thank the community for supporting Art All Night and for all the kind words and support after the event. It really was a huge success. We had more than 3,000 people in the corridor, and it wasn't all from Van Ness. And I even got a huge compliment today that someone who attended with her parents and children, both ours and Tenleytown, and thought that ours was a higher quality and enjoyed it more. So that was very nice for me to hear. But thank you to everyone who came out. On the heels of Art All Night and trying to continue to bring more foot traffic to our corridor, we are partnering with Levine Music. And in November, we are bringing a concert series in collaboration with them. And the first one will be Friday, November 5th at Uptown Market, featuring Manny Arciniega's Global Music. Then we're looking at Saturday, November 13th for Josh Walker, which is jazz, and Saturday, November 20th, Carly Harvey with the blues. So we have Uptown Market already, on the books. We're waiting for 2 more venues. So this is exciting because this is what the businesses need is entertainment to draw traffic in. Then the other thing we're doing is on November 13th, which is also a Saturday, is our last pop-up bookstore in front of our office at 4340 Carpe Librum. We partner with Turning the Page. Last one right after Art All Night was very successful. And then we want everybody to mark their calendars for our final pop-up holiday market. It's a 6th annual. It's again in the same thing, a theme of bringing foot traffic into the corridor, and that'll run from 11 to 5 up and down. More sites to be determined, but some on the upper quarter and some on the lower quarter. And I will be out October 25th through November 9th, but Sherry Lester, who is our marketing guru, will be on call in case anything pops up while I'm away. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Garcia, as always, congratulations again on Art All Night and all the work you're
Thank you.
doing with businesses. So I think I
Thank you.
saw Mr. Tony Donaldson, who is he's the mayor's representative. And so I'd like to give him, if he wants to, either announcements or anything for the good of the order. Mr. Donaldson, the floor is yours. Maybe you didn't hear me.
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button there. Good evening, everyone. Again, Tony Donaldson with the mayor's office. No specific updates. Of course, we're encouraging folks who do qualify to get their booster shots for the COVID-19 vaccine. There was also an announcement by the mayor and DDOT, I believe about last week, regarding some changes that are happening within the process for traffic safety studies. And I'm happy to send that around to commissioners just to be sure that you've got the newest update and language on that. And of course, you can always feel free to reach me via email or telephone, and I'm always happy to support.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Appreciate your work. And yeah, if you could send that around about the DDOTs, that process, I think that would be helpful and useful to a lot of us here in ANC3F.
Yep, will do.
So I think this is, again, back to, Commissioner Tanderick, you have your hand up?
Oh, I was just going to say for people that are on the call, if you want to be part of a committee, we are part of several committees within ANC3F. Please consider joining. We are always looking for new people to join and get involved.
Thanks, Commissioner Tanderick. Again, the last part of this is if there's any questions or concerns that haven't been heard tonight, this is your chance to ask that question of us as commissioners. And although we also have the benefit of Mr. Donaldson from Mayor's office here. So if there's any questions, this is your time to ask them. If not, I think we might call it a night.
One quick question. I'm sorry to keep us here, but for Mr. Donaldson, the mayor recently made an announcement around putting more urgency around Vision Zero initiatives. Can you speak to what that might mean for 3F and many of the issues that we have seen raised tonight and earlier?
Yes, I do understand that we've heard from a number of commissioners. I've been working with our DDOT Ward 3 liaison, Christian Pinero, on just highlighting and getting some action on a number of issues that you all have raised. However, the most recent announcement, the mayor shared that DDOT will accelerate roadway and intersection improvements that will enhance pedestrian safety, including installation of speed humps, stop signs, and right turn hardening measures. And primarily that's for some of the quicker turnaround things that we can get done to help address and improve upon the Vision Zero goals. Also, she announced that starting now and annually, DDOT will target 100 intersections that are within the district's high crash, high injury corridors. And that's similar to the 2021 summer safety campaign. And while I have not identified those 100 intersections for this year, I have been working with DDOT to raise the ones that you all have identified. I know that there are some that we've been working with Commissioner Mehta as well as Commissioner David that you all have raised. And I've also made a note to myself here to connect with the Streets and Sidewalks Committee to see if there's any issues or target areas that you all have identified to make sure that they're in the list as well.
Right, and hopefully, Mr. Donaldson, thank you for that. You have a resolution that we just passed tonight.
Correct.
The intersections of 37th and 38th at Van Ness.
Yeah, definitely. I've made note of that, and we'll be looking to get a copy of that to ensure DDOT and our senior leadership has.
And I think
Chairman Castillo, there's one more question from the community. Marjorie Scher has a question.
Yes, thank you. Everyone, to add to the very good summary from Kathy Sykes, another point that was brought up in the Parks and Watershed Committee meeting was about Soapstone Sewer Rehabilitation Project, that huge project that's about to begin. And there is some confusion among residents and also businesses about the project, both in terms of schedule, where they're going to start, exactly what's going to happen. And I don't know if we need a special ANC meeting for that. We need something because pretty much everyone is in the dark. There are also some additional health and environmental concerns that have been raised. A lot of issues out there. So I just wanted to point that out.
Right, Ms. Scher, thanks for raising that. I know that was part of the streets and sidewalks. It was also parks. It was part of parks and watersheds. As you say, there's some confusion and also around how they're going to be cleaning the pipes, whether it's steam or not. And so I appreciate that. So I think it's on our radar screen, and as to whether we'll have either a special. I think that speaking of options, we have an option to do it as a special meeting, just to have it off the regular agenda, or we could have it as part of our regular meeting. And I guess in this case, it'd have to be in November. So I think this is something that we'll consider and figure out what the at least from our perspective, what what's best for the community in terms of kind of making sure the issues are discussed and so on. So thanks for raising that.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up. I look at the clock and it's 9:02. I think I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. That was fast. I know what that means. All right. Second motion, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
I don't think anybody's opposed. So thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for a good meeting. Thanks for people that represented the community, committee chairs, and Mr. Donaldson and Gloria Garcia, who's left, Van Ness Main Street. Until next time, November 16th, it'll be our last meeting of the calendar year. So join us. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.